confused on your wedding timeline, maybe you don't know when certain things are supposed to happen during that day or how long they take, how are you supposed to make a timeline without knowing these things? Well, today I'm here to go ahead and help you with all of those. So stay tuned, watch this video, and learn more about how to create your own wedding timeline. Hey everyone, it's your favorite wedding planner, Bree here. And as I said earlier, we are going to be discussing how to create a wedding timeline. As most of you probably know, timelines are the backbone of a wedding. Timelines let everybody know when things are happening, how long they're supposed to take, etc. There are a lot of moving parts in a wedding, a lot of people who contribute to the wedding, including your vendors. And so it is important that all of them have the same timeline and that everyone is on the same page so they know what's going on. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the first step of the day, the first thing on your timeline, which is going to be getting ready. I would say in general, men and women take different amount of times to get ready. Men, I would say for a wedding day, plan at least 2 hours to get ready. I know generally you just have to brush your hair, take a shower, shave, whatever. But still, I would plan enough time to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And if something does go wrong, that you have time to fix that. As far as women, I would say the more people you have in your wedding party, the longer it's gonna take because women have hair and makeup to do. However, I would say generally 6 hours ahead of time is good because you wanna start getting 6 hours ready 6 hours ahead of time because there are other steps that come before the wedding as well. One thing I will mention with getting ready is make sure you have fun. Bust out the music, break out the mimosas, and just have fun with your people while you're getting ready. It doesn't have to be so serious. The next thing is getting dressed. So that should also be included in your getting ready time, but I would say make sure you leave yourself at least 15 minutes to get dressed as, the bride or groom. If your wedding dress as the bride has a lot more ties or things that need to be done in order to get you into it, maybe give it a little bit more time in your timeline for getting ready and getting into your dress. Next is solo portraits. So obviously, yes, you have a lot of couple portraits, you have portraits with family, you have portraits with your bridal party, but you also want to have solo portraits of just you as the bride or just you as the groom. So you want to make sure that you leave enough time. That's why I say 6 hours before start doing hair and makeup, is because there are other things you need to do before the wedding starts. Another thing you want to leave room for in your timeline is solo wedding party photos. So basically a bride and her bridesmaids, just the girls, or a groom and his groomsmen, just the guys, not as an entire wedding party, but as, split wedding party. You want to also get those kind of photos as well. Something that you will have to decide on as a couple is if you want to do a first look before, or if you just want to see that person when they're coming down the aisle. If you plan on doing a first look, I would allot 30 minutes, and here's my reasoning. A first look generally takes a couple minutes. I mean, to capture that moment, you have to do it kind of quickly, but then you can also take couple portraits, which is the bride and groom, right after that first look. And you also might even be able to squeeze in entire wedding party photos at that time as well, so that you don't have to take time out of your reception to do that later on. Obviously, if you're not gonna do a first look before, that gives you a little bit more time to get other photos done, or it gives you a little bit more time to get ready, things like that. That's something that you're gonna have to decide as a couple. Another thing that you want to allot some time for is if your getting ready area is at a different location than your ceremony or reception venue, you need to leave travel time in your timeline. So I would usually say to leave 30 minutes just in case traffic or anything like that. You always want to make sure that you have enough time and that you're not gonna be late, right? With that, you also generally have a prelude, which is when your guests are walking in, music, things like that. I would say that you do not want to have the guests see you while they're coming in. You want your entrance to be a surprise to them. So you should probably get from your getting ready area to your ceremony venue with at least 30 minutes to spare before the ceremony starts. So that way the majority, at least, of people do not see you even walking into, a waiting area before you go out to your ceremony. Next is your ceremony. So a ceremony timing really differs. It's going to depend on whether it's religious or, you know, what other kind of things you're including in your ceremony. If it's just a simple, straight ceremony, even if it's your own vows or, you know, the traditional vows, it can take as little as 10-15 minutes. It's really up to you. If it's religious, it's going to take more like an hour generally. It really just depends. I always allot more time for a ceremony just in case, because worst comes to worst, cocktail hour is a little bit longer, which is not a huge deal. Cocktail hour is generally an hour, hence the name cocktail hour. What I always say for cocktail hour is right after the ceremony, cocktail hour begins for your guests. However, I usually take the bride and groom to a separate room, give them champagne and appetizers, and let them just hang out for 10 minutes. They just got married. It's a nice thing to do, and actually get some food in them as well. I try to keep them plenty fed throughout the night, because I hear that as a big complaint is people don't even try their own wedding food. So that might be something that you need to include in your timeline, or make sure that you have a person making you eat, basically. For 40 minutes of that, so you already had 10 minutes, the next 40 minutes are generally photos. So that's when you're gonna do family photos. You can do more wedding party photos. If you have time, you can do more couple photos. If you did not do a first look, that's when you're going to most likely need to do your couple photos. So you might need to even allot more than 40 minutes, just depending on kind of how you structured that. And then the last 10 minutes, I usually say you wanna use to touch up your makeup, to bustle a dress if you have a train, to, you know, take out the veil if you don't wanna wear the veil for the entrance and for dinner. I usually say leave about 10 minutes just to kind of like get yourself together again after everything just happened. Then what is going to happen is wedding party intros. So we obviously, the DJ or whoever is the MC will get everybody seated in the reception venue, and then the intros will happen. Intros generally take about 10 minutes, I would say, if you're doing the entire wedding party. Some people just choose to do the couple. That's totally up to you. Obviously, if it's just the couple, it's gonna be more like 5 minutes, but if you are gonna do the entire wedding party, I would leave at least 10 minutes. And then a lot of times what happens right after the bride and groom enter is they will go into their first dance. So generally they will walk in and head straight to the dance floor instead of going and sitting down at their table and do their first dance. I usually allot 5 minutes for a first dance. Songs are generally around 3 minutes, so that's plenty of time for the first dance. Oftentimes after that first dance, I tell couples that it is nice to say some sort of welcome. If you're religious, maybe that's when you kind of want to do a prayer, because dinner generally comes next. For that welcome, I would recommend like 5 minutes. I mean, it's nothing crazy. It's just a little thank you for coming, blah, 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 maybe a prayer. Okay, let's eat. Then next, what's going to happen is dinner. So for dinner, it obviously depends on what kind of menu you're doing and how many people you have. That's gonna make the timing a little bit different. I usually say at least an hour. If you're doing a buffet, it's gonna take, 200 people a while to get through that buffet. And if you are doing a plated meal, it might take a while for 200 people to get their plates of food, depending on the caterer or the venue. So I always say at least an hour, because even if it's, people need less time or more time, toasts are next. And people can still be eating while people are giving a toast and things like that. That's not a super exact science. Sometimes things have to move around a little bit with the timeline in dinner. Just know that you might have to be a little bit flexible with that. Next is generally going to be toasts. So you generally, I would say, only want to allot 15 minutes for this. The reason why is a lot of people who do toasts give very expansive toasts, or some couples like to leave it open for everyone to give a toast. I do not recommend that. It could go on forever. I had one where it went on for an hour because I could not talk them out of doing open toasting. I say you generally have at max 4 people, and those 4 people should be maid of honor, best man, father of the bride, mother of the groom. That can vary a little bit if you want, or you can just do maid of honor, best man. That's totally cool too. People get uninterested the longer people talk. So I would say allot 15 minutes, tell each person that they have 3 minutes. If they go a little bit over, at least you allotted for that extra time. Next is going to be the parent dances. So father-daughter dance, mother-son dance. Again, I allot 5 minutes for each, because no song generally is longer than 5 minutes. And so if you allot the 5 minutes, it gives them time to walk up there, walk back, etc. The DJ or the MC to kind of make a little blip etc. Then if you're doing a money dance, the shoe game, if there's any other kind of religious or cultural things that you need to do, that next is kind of that time to do it. Money dance, I would say at least allot 10 minutes, because generally it takes the people through the first song to kind of get their money out and get up there. So generally there's kind of a late start to that. So you don't want to only allot 5 minutes and then, people are still in line trying to give you money and you didn't leave enough time. And the shoe game, I would say at least 10 minutes as well. Could be 15 depending on how many questions that you have. And then generally I would say there should be a dance break kind of after that, before cake cutting and bouquet and garter. And oftentimes that is kind of when sunset is happening. So photographers want to get those golden hour photos. So if you just leave 30 minutes open dancing, DJ can turn the music up a little bit, get the party started, people can mingle, and you can go off and take your sunset photos if that's something you wish to do. If not, you can stay in the reception area and mingle with people as well. One thing that takes about 10 minutes is your cake cutting. So cake cutting, generally I will do after that 30-minute break, and I will usually do cake before I do bouquet and garter. And here's my reasoning. If somebody is having an actual cake that they want to cut and serve, then they can do their little pictures with cake cutting, which takes about 10 minutes. And then that large cake can be taken in the kitchen and cut and served while the bouquet and garter is happening. If it's just a dessert bar, I say to do it the opposite way. I say to do bouquet and garter first and then your cake, because then people are going to want to attack that dessert bar. So it really just depends on the order you kind of want to go in. If you are doing cake, it takes about 10 minutes probably for that pictures and cutting and feeding each other type of thing. And then bouquet and garter, I would allot 10 minutes for each, so 20 minutes total, just in case, because sometimes it does take a while to get the single ladies or the single guys up to the dance floor. Bouquet is usually a little quicker. Garter, the guy actually has to take the garter off and then get the guys out there and then toss it. So I would at least leave 10 minutes for each of those activities. And then I always, at the end of that, try to allot an hour and a half to 2 hours for just fun. It's your wedding. You want to have fun. You want people to have fun. You want the drinks to be flowing. You want the dancing to be happening. Try to leave time. Then, you can talk to people. Obviously, you can talk to them during dinner too, but I always recommend that you eat during dinner because, like I said, another big thing that a lot of people say is they regret that they didn't try their wedding food. And then if you are doing a wedding exit, usually I would allot at least 15 minutes for that. Depending on if you're changing an outfit, then maybe a little bit longer. But as far as the crowd and actually exiting, 15 minutes, because you need to get people in a tunnel. You need to give them their sparkler, their glow stick, their bubbles, whatever you're using for your exit. And then also actually do the exit as well and say your goodbyes. So I would at least have 15 minutes for that. A couple other things to be sure and include all extras into your timeline. So your official timeline that you give everybody, yes, it should have all of these things, and that's kind of the timing and amount of time that it takes as well as the order. However, if you're doing additional things like, okay, food is being delivered to the wedding party while they're getting ready, that should be in your timeline as well, just so that you don't forget that that's happening. It just makes your entire day easier if all those little things are included in your timeline. Your timeline should realistically be 2 to 3 pages long if you include everything you need to in it. And like I said, this can be sent to everyone so that everyone's on the same page and there's no excuse for anybody to not be on the same page. Be thorough. You don't want mistakes to happen. All right, everybody, that is kind of the general timeline that I see nowadays, as well as the timing it kind of takes to get those things done. Obviously, there are always going to be little extras or things that vary from wedding to wedding. If you're not sure, ask someone, Google it, figure it out. I mean, even if you don't have a wedding planner and you need a little bit of help making a timeline, I know a lot of photographers or videographers or DJs will help do that as well. So that's something that you can ask about if you're really unsure. Especially maybe they won't make the entire timeline for you, but they're kind of have experience with how long certain things take. And it doesn't hurt to ask, right? You can always ask. If you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And I will see you next week for the next weekly Wednesday wedding planning session with me, Wedding